Hi, welcome to another video for the Linux series with SQL. We'll still continue on, at least in this particular video, with mostly just Linux. In this video, I'll be going over managing authorization. Now, using a few commands to configure that authorization because authorization is the concept of granting access to specific controls, right? Or specific resources in a system, right? Or access to those resources, rather. So it's important because without authorization, any user could access or modify all files belonging to other users or system files. Now, this would certainly be a security risk. Now, in Linux, file and directory permissions are used to specify who has access to specific files and directories, of course. Now, what I'm going to do is actually explore the file and directory permissions and actually change some ownerships of a file and directory to limit who can access them. Now, as a security professional, setting appropriate access permissions is, of course, critical to protecting sensitive information and maintaining the overall security of any system, right? Now, let's go ahead and paint the scenario before we begin. Now, in this scenario, I must examine and manage the permissions on the files in the pretty much similar to what I've been using so far in the Linux environment that I have here, the /home/researcher, the number 2 /projects directory for the researcher2 user. Now, the researcher2, that user is part of a research_team group that's within Linux, right? Now, what I have to do is check the permissions for all files in the directory, including any hidden files also, to make sure that permissions align with the authorization that should be given. When it doesn't, I have to change that permission. So let's actually go ahead and get started with first checking the file and directory details. Now, I'm just going to do some exploring of the permissions of the projects directory and then the file that it contains. Then let's see, actually, let me stop talking. Let's go ahead and start with the commands here. Get started here. Now, funny enough that I'm doing this activity as far as managing operation, there was actually a story recently published about Mercedes-Benz having a public-facing GitHub repository that had I believe, a password key or some type of key. I forget the exact details of the story, but the key, which was, of course, by an employee of Mercedes-Benz, was exposed, again, public-facing repository in GitHub, and it actually had access to pretty much got access to absolutely everything as far as having those credentials to be able to access, things you shouldn't access if you're on the outside of the Mercedes-Benz umbrella as far as work is concerned. But nonetheless, let me go back to my activity that I have here. I'm just exploring, I'm navigating particularly to the projects directory, and I'm going to list some contents in there. I'm wondering if I should actually, let's see, just list the contents from here. I don't have to necessarily change the directory, but nonetheless, we're here. So, so as you can see here, I listed the contents that were in projects, at least that portion of the directory. We have draft, we have project_k text file, project m text file, project r text file, right? I have a few things that we can see, right? And then I'm also not only going to list the contents, but I'm also going to take a look at the permissions as well. Right, perfect. So I can see the permissions here. Looks like they pretty much have not necessarily free reign, but they have quite a large. I mean, they have read and write executable permissions that they can have, right? And this also shows the date and time, right? Uh, but I actually shows the date and time that I ran the command. That's actually pretty funny. Let's see. All right, now let's see if there is any hidden files also. Let's see. I'm already in projects. I don't know why I did that. Okay, looks like there are, looks like there's only quite a few hidden files, right? No. RMT. It's like project, no, project K is that there. Just project X text file looks like that's the only uh, hidden file that we have here. But nonetheless, now I'm just going to move forward to my next task. Now that I've perused through that, I'm going to change some file permissions. Now I have to determine whether any files have any incorrect permissions and then change the permissions as needed, of course. And what this action is going to do is going to remove any unauthorized access and strengthen security on the system. And really, none of the files should allow the other users to write to the file. So just going to check whether any files have any unwarranted permissions here. So I'm just going to go through each one by one. Let's see. I'm already in project, so I'll just go down the line here. This, I guess. Let's see. Okay. Looks like it pretty much has all of the permissions. Let's take a look at the next one, project K. I don't think I have to select that. Just read and write. Just perusing through here. Looks like project K. Actually, let me start. All right, the drafts, read and write. All of them have reading and writing permissions. Let's see what grants other users write permissions here. Let's see. Like project M. Let's see, because that's why I like a good clean screen. So I'm not looking like I need glasses while I'm perusing through uh, the outputs here. Let's see. Okay. All right, I'm just perusing to see what the permissions look like. So what I'm going to do now is just change the permissions of the file project K as far as the text file because because so the owner type of other doesn't have right permission. So I'm going to change that. So let's do I can spell. Okay, perfect. So permissions are pretty much going to be granted for at least what I like to do is permissions are going to be granted for three different types of owners, namely user, group, and other. So what happens is in the chmod command or I don't know how you pronounce it. The command U it sets the permissions for the user who owns the file. G sets the permissions for the group that own the file, and O sets the permission for others, which is the O that I have here. So the project M, if we take a look, let's see. here. So project M, right, it's a restricted file and should not be readable or writable, at least in this scenario, by the group or any other. Now, only the user should have permissions, should have these permissions on this file that we're seeing here. Now, I'm going to take a look at the contents and the permissions of the current directory and check if the group has read or write permissions. Well, I did that previously, but that's what I would normally do in another environment, especially normally when I clear out the screen, like so. Actually, I shouldn't even did that. But you get my point. So let's see. Use it again. The um, all right, perfect. All right, perfect. Permission. Right. Uh, hmm. Okay, so let me go ahead and change the command. We'll change the permissions rather. So let's do this command here. Right. Let's see. All right. So clearly that was the incorrect. So let's do uh, this here. Um, going on here. Oh, there it is. All right, so with this particular command, I'll be making a permanent change as far as the permissions that are allowed. G is for group, O is for other, as far as what I'm placing in my command here. Now, it should be changed, right? And I can also do a temporary if I were to do, let's see, if I pretty much remove the O, right? And I did it, it would be more of a, well, not just a O, but also the W. Then it would be more of a temporary change if I'm not going to make any more additional changes. Now, to actually verify that the change has been made, which I always preach and make sure to verify. Let's see if we do this here. Perfect. So we can see now it only has it redeemed just for who we need it accessible for, as far as any others who should not have access to it. So this allows me to move on to my next task. We're going to be changing file permissions to the hidden file, which we saw earlier, project X, right? Before I continue, let me go ahead and figure out this. Let me type. Well, nonetheless, what I have to do is determine if a hidden file has incorrect permissions first and then change the permissions as needed if so. Right. So what it's going to do is remove again further access, unauthorized access rather, and strengthen security on the system in particular. So as I mentioned, project underscore X text file is a hidden file that has been archived and should not be written to by anyone. So but the user in the group should still be able to read the file in particular, at least this file. So just going to check the permissions of the hidden file first. So let's do, I don't remember if it was showing that here. Let's do not access. That's a lie. Let's see. Project X. Okay, let's see here. So it's there. All right, so let's try this here. Play a game. Um, Hmm, okay. Let me figure out how to get into this hidden file here. All right, I think I'm figuring it out. Let's see. We do um, ah, there's always a user error. So there it is. It works. So let's take a look at what's in projects. Actually, that's the wrong command. All right. So we saw that we pretty much were just checking the hidden file with the last command with the chmod. Let me clear this out. Now what I'm going to do is change the permission for it. So let's do modification again. This time we're going to do gr perfect. There it is. So let's clear it out. Perfect. So I've changed the permissions, right? So I'm actually, let me verify that the permissions were changed here. Let's see here. Okay, that's what I wanted. All right, so we're good. I just wanted to verify that we're all good to go. So this allows me to move on to my next task, which is changing directory permissions. So what I'm going to do is actually change the permissions of a directory by checking the group permissions of the directory that I have, or actually a different directory or subdirectory rather, where I'm at, and then modifying the permissions as required as well. So essentially, only the researcher two user that I've been using should be allowed access to what I call, or at least the subdirectory drafts, um, and its contents, which means that only the researcher two would have execute privileges on that subdirectory for drafts. So let's go ahead first with changing the permissions of the directory. Well, actually, first checking the group permissions of the drafts um, directory. So let's do. Uh, okay. All right. Not too bad. Not too bad. So let's actually now that I see what's going on with them, I'm actually going to modify the permissions. So let's do um, uh, if it's gonna work. Okay. Still the research team has access to do that. So let's pivot over to another command here. All right, so let's see this one here. Actually, that's not what I'm thinking about. It's um, search file and directory. What's that? Let's see if am I misspelling something. Let's see. Been this the entire time, right? Okay, leave of course as normal user error. So let's go back here. Okay, perfect. Um, so I went ahead and changed the permission for the drafts. And now what I'm going to do is actually um, remove the execute permission from uh, remove the execution from the remove the execute permission for the group from the drafts directory. So if we do uh, this here, I mean, it's not totally necessary really, but all right. And then we do something like, let's see, there. But there it is. And I've removed it. And just to double check it, let's see. There it is. Perfect. So we are officially good to go as far as removing the execute permission for the group from the drafts directory. And I also reached the end of this video where I showcase practical experience using basic Linux bash shell commands, examining file and directory permissions, change permissions on files, and changing permissions on directory. Now, while I will admit I do need to work in Linux, but this is part of the journey, part of the fun, right? And learning, understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are, and the willingness to strengthen those weaknesses. And I'm definitely going to do a lot more videos coming up to definitely strengthen. Not going to say I'm not going to say it's the weakest part, but one of the not so strong parts of this learning path, but I'm definitely going to continue to do more and more labs and videos to showcase that I am efficient in as far as Linux and a bash shell command is concerned. So nonetheless, in the meantime, to the next video, stay curious, stay secure.